And we are back with another episode of the Kyle Lanslone Show, and I have a real special treat for everyone today. The great Captain Matthew Ho. Matt, welcome back to the show. Very happy to have you here today. How you doing?
Good, Kyle. It's good to see you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Everybody, his Substack is an absolute must read. And of course, his weekly appearances with Andrew Napolitano on Judging Freedom are you have to watch them to keep up with everything going on in the world. His analysis is absolutely essential. Matt, I got a lot I want to talk to you about today. I hope we could get through all of it. We actually had to revamp the show a little bit because there's some breaking stuff I want to get into with you. Just following orders. What kind of an excuse is that? Trump's got a peace plan. Would Israel use nukes against Iran? And if we have time, let's talk some war in Ukraine. So starting off here, Matt, there was this, which I wouldn't see as a controversial video, but a video that's generated some controversy. It's Democratic lawmakers with a message to our men and women in uniform. Let's play this clip.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris Deluzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military,
but that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
Like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
or our Constitution.
We know this is hard
and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Well, Matt, I don't know if I've ever watched a video with Elise Stolkin and Kelly and Crow and agreed with it before, but I agree with the message they have. But I've never been in the military, and so maybe I just don't understand. Do you agree with them, former Captain Matt Ho?
I do agree with them, and same. I don't think I've ever seen a message from them that I understand that I've agreed with either, whether individually or in any form of aggregate. And that goes, I'm sure, the same way, and I imagine most of the folks who are watching, that goes with really any member of Congress at this point, right? But there is a requirement for military members to disobey illegal orders. The Uniform Code of Military Justice provides a standard for that. It's essentially a reasonable person standard that illegal orders are those, and they have an exact phrase that off the top of my head I can't remember, but that there is this understanding that illegal orders are ones that a reasonable person with a degree of understanding of the world, would object to. So murder, theft, things that are straightforward like that meet that test. Where it gets tricky for the service members is when it is not so clear and dry, where the arguments for why this is illegal requires an explanation, right? And so this is what makes it difficult for service members to not follow orders, is because they are confronted with this conundrum of, if something is not clearly illegal, that it's something that a reasonable person would immediately identify as illegal, the issue then is, okay, at what point then can they, on their own, with their own reasoning, with their own application of their conscience, right, with their own understanding of the context and all that's involved here, can they make that determination that they will have the responsibility to defy illegal orders? And this all comes out of the 1945 Nuremberg trials. This
Right.
all comes out from the trials that the Allied powers put the Nazi leadership under, subjugated them. I mean, it's really a remarkable thing, isn't it? I mean, that victors like that actually provided due process to the vanquished, not just to any vanquished, men who had clearly committed crimes against humanity that most of us couldn't imagine on our own. But so certainly getting back to this question though about not following orders, it is something that is available because the contrary is true. The contrary to this is all true. That the excuse of following orders is not an excuse. Saying that you carried out crimes, conducting yourself in a way that was illegal, violated the Uniform Code of Military Justice, violated the United States Constitution and American laws. There is no defense for that. I was just following orders defense, as we understand it, as it was promulgated from the Nuremberg trials, is not a defense. So, I know this is long-winded. It's more complicated than I probably made it, but it is a complicated thing. It's not so cut and dry as, young men and women who were with the National Guard pulling perimeter security for immigration and customs enforcement. My thing to them was, of course, disobey. I mean, that's my thing as a private individual looking at these circumstances. But for them, it's not so easy, in turn to make that termination and not end up in the stockade or in the brig, if they do so.
So when I watched this video, what came to mind for me, Matt, was the situation in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific now, where we're blowing up drug boats.
Hmm.
Senator Rand Paul has called it illegal extrajudicial killing. Of course, there's no declaration of war. There's no suggestion that the people on these boats are armed, even much less in any way a threat to our military, or anything like that. So, let's say, Matt, this is a couple decades ago. You're stationed in the Caribbean, and you're given orders to, launch a strike on one of these boats. How's this calculation kind of play out for the actual men and women who may be given illegal orders?
Well, we've seen it play out a number of times where almost all of them have followed through on it. If any have not, we're not aware of this. And we are aware, though, that Admiral Halsey, who had been the commander of U.S. Southern Command, so for the U.S. military, a command responsible for Latin America and the Caribbean, he resigned. This is more than a month now. But however, we've not seen any definitive statement from him as to his resignation. All we have essentially are rumors or hearsay as to why he resigned. The assumption is that he was in disagreement with the policies, and to what degree that disagreement, it- you know, to what degree that disagreement was, we're uncertain. We don't know, and so it would be really wonderful, really great if Admiral Halsey was to break his silence on this. Maybe he will. I mean, when you're in uniform, you have to be careful about what you say publicly. So maybe it's a question of him just actually getting his retirement papers and getting out of uniform before he speaks. But certainly will be interesting once he is fully out of uniform, if he's not already, to hear what he has to say about this. For those drone operators, for those sailors aboard the ships, this, I think a lot of it comes down to the pressure that they're under to perform. The reality that they are junior officers and sailors who are following orders, and as we discussed, that's not an excuse. But when you're in that reality, when you're living, when you're in their shoes, that is what's occurring. Is that you are being passed orders through your chain of command that you have trusted that these are legal orders. And I think there's a lot of human elements that come into this. So these men and women who are carrying out these strikes, so, again, junior officers and sailors and airmen, I think, that the thought process is, well, they wouldn't be telling me to do this if it wasn't legal. I'm a junior guy. I'm just a sailor. I'm just an airman. If the colonel or the captain didn't agree with this, he wouldn't have me doing this, right? And that's the excuse, that's the rationalization that goes up the chain of command, right? It falls under that Nuremberg defense of following orders. But I think it is an aspect of human beings being put into these circumstances. There's also the other aspect too, Kyle, that these men and women who are flying these drones, firing the missiles from the ships, however these extrajudicial executions are being carried out. These men and women aren't watching you and Scott Horton or Judge Napolitano. I mean, the amount of information that they're taking in regarding all of this is rather limited. And many of them, if they are, maybe they're trying to keep up with it, and they're getting the early bird from the Military Times. Well, that's pulling from the Washington Post, that's pulling from the New York Times, right? That's pulling from USA Today or all the defense periodicals out there, which we all know in the past have proven to be reliable propaganda outlets for the Pentagon, for the White House when it comes to wars overseas. Some of it is just the fact that these men and women who are carrying out are just, I think, maybe ignorant of the reality of what they're doing here. And they've come to trust their chain of command. They trust their higher authorities. If they're being told that these guys are smuggling drugs, then why would I think my command is lying to me? It's that type of thought process, is that type of reasoning, I think, that they go through, that is unique to them because it's specific to them, but it's general or it's common for service members through a host of wars, through a host of conflicts, a host of invasions and occupations, to be put in this position where they frankly don't have the information to make decisions on their own, and they have a trust in their command that says, okay, I'm doing the right thing here, and then they have the excuse that I'm following orders or that this is above my pay grade, right? And we all know that those are no excuses, that those are no reasons why, but I think that's the reality of it.
Yeah, and you see it in kind of any job you work, right, where people know that something isn't the right way for something to be done, but that's the way they were told to do it, and so they just do it that way because that's how things work. You listen to your boss. And unfortunately, I have heard from a few even active duty military over the years telling me they really love the show and read antiwar.com, but the number is definitely too few.
Well,
No,
it is, and I know that too. I know plenty of guys who read antiwar.com in the intelligence community, in the military. Most of my peers, I'm in my 50s, so most of my peers are have gotten out by now. But yeah, no, the work that antiwar.com does, because it is so objective. No one's going to. I mean, you lay it out there what your principles are through the title, right? Through the name of the organization. But the reality is, antiwar.com, and then the work that you do and Scott does, and Dave DeCamp and Eric and Jason and everyone else,
right.
It's objective. It really is. It's professional, and it's objective analysis that pulls in a heck of a lot of context and history and background that you don't get in traditional corporate media.
Well, thank you so much for that, Matt. It's a high endorsement coming from you. Now, I do want to talk about the response to this video because Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump are absolutely losing their minds. So let's start here with Lindsey Graham.
You've got United States senators and members of the House suggesting to our men and women in the military that they should be disobeying unlawful orders issued by President Trump and his military. I was a military lawyer for 33 years. I was a prosecutor, defense attorney, and a military judge. And if you're listening to this program tonight, I find no evidence that President Trump or anyone in your chain of command has issued an unlawful order to you. To the people who made these accusations, I'm going to write you a letter tomorrow, and I want you to tell the country what orders you think are unlawful. What did President Trump do wrong as Commander-in-Chief? You owe that to the men and women of the military to be specific about what you're talking about. If you're in the military, you need to follow the lawful orders of your commanders. And Article 92, check it out.
So, Matt, we got this from Graham. Donald Trump then posted this on Truth Social, if we could pull this up. Seditious behavior punishable by death. That is just absolutely absurd. So, Matt, I would love to get your response here.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do agree with, the good Lord strike me dead for saying this, but I do agree with Senator Graham to a degree. With these members of Congress should be providing that info. They should say this is what is specifically illegal, and this is why you should disobey. By doing that, they will be providing a great service to those men and women out there who are conflicted by this. So to hear this message coming from these members of Congress that it's illegal, you should need to disobey. Well, help these guys out, help these men and women out in the service then, and give them the information they need to say, okay, yes, this is wrong. I think for those out there who are concerned, for those in uniform who are conflicted about this, very often it's internal. They're not talking about it in the chow hall together or in the barracks at night. It's maybe ones and twos, but there's not these large conversations, and so they're carrying this weight with them, this confliction, this angst, right? This internal contradiction they're going through of what they're doing versus what they believe. So to be isolated like that with your own thoughts and going through this type of crisis, well, then you need that support. And so I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do agree with Senator Lindsey Graham that these members of Congress should put out, this is why we're saying this. I could say it. It's certainly you're carrying out extrajudicial killings on people who have not been afforded any form of due process. We don't even know who these people are. You're claiming that for what they're alleged to have done, that doesn't carry the weight of the death penalty in the United States. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as well as just the overall general reality of these types of the use of military force against an unarmed non-combatant. That goes against the laws of warfare. So there are things there that are clear. This is why they are saying this. But I agree with Senator Graham that these other members of Congress should state it as forthrightly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, even when you agree with them, they're still, cowardly in their own way.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if they do that or not. I get a feeling that they won't really put their name behind something as forceful as that.
Yeah. Because that would, be a direct statement, right? Like this is like a video that's meant to be shared on TikTok. It's not, I don't think it represents maybe a real policy change or change the way they're going to vote or anything like that. Unfortunately,
I think it's probably more for fundraising than anything else.
Right.
I think that's the prime purpose in it is just fundraising, trying to get money into the coffers of the DNC. Because regardless of how noble it may strike us for these, members of Congress to be calling for members of the military to disobey unlawful orders, how righteous that is. We all know that these people we just saw speaking, they're partisan down to their core. And they said nothing about none of them said anything about the genocide in Gaza. None of them said anything when Barack Obama expanded the American wars from 2 wars to 7 wars and launched drone strikes around the world. Right? None of them did any of them say anything when Barack Obama killed 2 American citizens with drone strikes. So the hypocrisy we all know is there. We all know that it's there. So it is. It's it is what it is.
Yeah. So Matt, this is really turning into like a big story here. When I first saw the video, I actually didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I saw Graham's response and I was like, that's interesting. But with Trump's post on Truce Social, this really blows up. And pretty much right after, Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, is confronted about it in the Capitol building. And I think this is a CNN journalist asking him a question.
How you doing? The president posted that Democrats who urge service members to not follow illegal orders should be punished. It should be seditious, conspiracy, and punishable by death. Do you have any response to that?
Look, I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history. And as the father of a young man who is, at the Naval Academy, going to be joining the service, I know young soldiers, airmen, sailors, they don't need that kind of nonsense from people in Congress. It is very dangerous.
But
at a
punish
very
won't
dangerous
debate
time.
that. Punish will
I'm
debate
going to
that.
let others define what it is, but it's wildly inappropriate.
So, Matt, what are your thoughts here?
I'm reminded of when he says that, when Speaker Johnson says how they don't need that. They just need to essentially be mindless automatons who follow orders without thinking, who, essentially he's telling them not to embrace any individuality, just to entirely give themselves over to the machine. And I'm reminded of Charlie Chaplin, in The Great Dictator, saying to people, don't give yourself to the brutes, right? Don't give yourself to the machine men with machine minds. And if people are not familiar with that speech by Chaplin, The Great Dictator, it's on YouTube. Watch that, please. But that's essentially it. You see Johnson, Speaker Johnson, essentially saying our service members are just to be used as we see fit, and they shouldn't be able to think. They shouldn't be able to act. Their souls, their minds, their bodies are ours. And so the anger that he has there, because you see he gets flustered a bit, right? The anger that he has at this suggestion that there might be some disruption in the control of the empire over its soldiers is not just angering, but probably a bit frightening to him as well.
Yeah, man, I don't know if you caught this, but I just read a report in French media that the uh, chief of the, I think, French defense staff, so I'm guessing that's like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a top French general, just said that the French people must be prepared to lose their children, was his exact words, in a war with Russia, and that the soul of the nation is at stake, and they have to be prepared to make this sacrifice, and that's far more blunt than what Mike Johnson is saying, but it's essentially the same message, right?
It is. It is. And it doesn't have to come from demagogues or despots, right? It doesn't have to come from, it comes just from the ruling class itself. I mean, it doesn't have to be one side or the other. And it doesn't have to be one nationality or other. This is what unites the ruling class: is its need to control and its need to protect itself, and its need to see its objectives obtained. And in the sense of, say, the war in Ukraine, and why you have people like this French defense minister saying that people of France should be willing to give up their children for this war 1,000 miles away in Ukraine, an unwinnable proxy war. It's because their identities at stake here, right? And that's what's so dangerous, is when the elites, when the ruling class has their identity tied into, wedded to these wars, right? When it's wedded into these campaigns, these crusades, if you will, then these men and women will do anything to maintain that identity, including, as we just, as you said, demanding that the people of France, or the people of anywhere, really, because that statement could come from a leader in any country, demand that the people give up their children for the preservation of the government, for the preservation of the ruling class, essentially.
Absolutely. Matt, I want to ask you about the situation in Gaza. Of course, the peace plan, or not the peace plan, the ceasefire, the truce really isn't a ceasefire. Truce, 300 Palestinians have died over the first 5 weeks of it. Israel has bombed the strip close to 200 times. Israeli troops have fired on Palestinian civilians close to 200 times. They're allowing in, about a third of the aid that they agreed to. And it appears to me to kind of be hanging by a thread at this point. And the U.S. is just letting Israel get away with whatever they want. And Netanyahu seems determined to make sure that the Palestinians can never agree to it. I want to play this recent clip of Netanyahu speaking about a future Palestinian state.
Well, things need to be stated as they are in the clearest way possible. To this people, to this invented people called the Palestinian people, must not be given a state. This people cannot be established because the aspiration of those who seek to establish that state is to erase the state of Israel. I am appealing today to our dear Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You must declare that Abu Mazen has no immunity whatsoever. If they push for recognition of this invented state, if the UN recognizes this, you, Mr. Prime Minister, must order targeted eliminations of the senior officials of the authority who are terrorists.
I want to address two specific topics. The first topic is the alleged demilitarization of the part of Gaza that is under Hamas control. There was no such thing. Even in the 20-point plan and in everything else, this area will be demilitarized and Hamas will be disarmed. Either it will happen the easy way or it will happen the hard way, as I said, and as President Trump also said. And regarding the Palestinian state, our opposition to a Palestinian state on any territory west of the Jordan remains. It is firm and unwavering. It has not changed in the slightest. I have been fending off these attempts for decades now, doing so in the face of both external and internal pressures. So I do not need encouragement, tweets, or lectures from anyone.
So that was, of course, Ben-Gvir speaking first and then Benjamin Netanyahu, but both delivering parts of the same message, right? That the Palestinians will never have a state, as well as the atrocities happening in Gaza. Of course, there's the ongoing slow annexation of the West Bank. And so, Matt, what do you think kind of is the course of the ceasefire over the next few months? Is there any chance it holds on, that we see it escalate and we actually get to a full end to the war in Gaza, or is Israel going to destroy this thing?
You know, gosh, Kyle, I mean, I know the Palestinians are going to suffer and that their suffering will remain constant. They've been abandoned by the world the same week that the UN Security Council votes to give the United States a colony in Gaza, essentially, meets all Israel's needs by doing so. So as the world turns its back on the Palestinians that way, they then turn around and they all vote, with the exception of Israel, the United States, and the handful of nations, Pacific Island nations that we own, essentially. The entire world votes for Palestinian statehood. I mean, so the hypocrisy, the farce of it all, and the Palestinians just left to suffer. Will this ceasefire get carried out in the way that it's been written down? Will this international stabilization force come into existence? Will there be a border peace? Will there be phases and reconstruction and so on and so forth? And the Israelis eventually pull out of the 55% of Gaza that they're still occupying? I don't know. I think that's doubtful. I think that we've seen real pushback from the handful of states that were interested in providing forces for this international stabilization force. None of them want to come in and essentially do America and Israel's dirty work by disarming, by subjugating, by policing, Hamas and the other elements of the Palestinian resistance in Gaza. So just based on that might fall apart. I think what we're looking at is essentially, and what has occurred is nearly all of the Palestinians in Gaza have been forced into an area of Gaza that's 45% of what it was. So the Israelis control 55%, and nearly all the Palestinians are in the remaining 45%. The Israelis control the best land. They control the best agricultural land. They control the land with the best water resources. This is what their settlers want. The Americans have already said that we will begin reconstruction in the Israeli-controlled lands. And so I think what you have then is you have the Palestinians are now restricted. They're confined to an even smaller concentration camp. And I think that's essentially what this is going forward. So essentially what you have is you have status quo of October 6, 2023, with the Palestinians transferred into a smaller cage. The Israelis can bring their settlers into the eastern part of Gaza. You essentially have an east and a west Gaza now. So the Israeli settlers can come into East Gaza. The Witkoff-Kushner real estate group can begin their operations as they see fit. I think they might be a little upset that they don't have the coastline, but I have a feeling that they have plans maybe to expand from the north of Gaza southwards, push the Palestinians even farther south. But, that's speculation. But what we can tell, though, is that the Israeli plan is continuing, and that they now have more than half of Gaza. They're able to increase their immiseration of the Palestinians. As you said, they're not providing the assistance in. They're able to kill as they want. And the idea being then that, the Palestinians will be so immiserated, it'll be so bad that they'll throw themselves into the sea. Or maybe at some point, Sisi, the Americans will get the bribe right, and the dictator Sisi will allow the Palestinians to be expelled into the Sinai, or, some type of deus ex machina that will resolve the situation. But in the meantime, I think the Israelis are happy with what they got. I heard one commentator say this yesterday, and I didn't think of it this way. The fact that Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir didn't throw a fit, didn't threaten to leave the government with this when this plan was announced, and that they went along with it, tells you everything you need to know about this plan. And I think for the Israelis, too, why they may be okay with no longer carrying out their full-scale genocide, which they can go back to at any time, but why they may be okay with with not continuing that and just doing this minor killing, right? This killing 300 people every month or so. Maybe that's what they'll maintain, is because I think they really do want to focus on the annexation of the West Bank. And in order to do that, they need to pacify Lebanon. They need to pacify Syria. They need to shape the area, if you will, to allow for the annexation of the West Bank to go forward, because that is ultimately the primary goal, the primary objective of the Israelis. It always has been, is the West Bank. God help me for saying, but the genocide in Gaza, the wars in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, those are all just supporting efforts for the eventual annexation of the West Bank by the Israelis.
Yeah. Just today, Matt, Human Rights Watch issued a report saying that Israel was committing crimes against humanity in the West Bank, that they've now evicted 30,000 people from 3 refugee camps in the West Bank, and they've destroyed 850 homes. So we're seeing a very similar, although scaled down, scenario playing out in the West Bank that we saw in Gaza. And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about making sure the Palestinians in Gaza stay immiserated. One of the first things that came out of Israel, this was put together by Ron Dermer after October 7th, was we have to make this situation in Gaza so unlivable that Arab states will finally break their resistance to taking in the Palestinians, because it will be viewed as an act of charity to take them in. And when you hear reports from the Al Shifa hospital that there's hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who, are like older people in my family. They have diabetes, they have heart failure, they have different more serious ailments, and they need care, they need dialysis, they need medications every day, or they're going to die a premature death. And so now all these people need medical transfers out of the strip. You have tens of thousands of children who have had amputations. And when you have an amputation as a child, you keep growing. That means you need a surgery. I think they said like at minimum every year or two, or else it's going to be extremely painful and cause a lot of long-term problems. And so not only are you able to ship out the kids, but, parents and family members who have to go with that kid to a foreign country. And suddenly, Israel's able to pretend like it's an act of charity that they're allowing these Palestinians to leave, when in reality, it's just a part of their long-term genocide by destroying the healthcare system in Gaza and making the thing completely unlivable.
Yeah, the Israelis will let the Palestinians out, just that they can't come back. And we have to remember too that the Israelis find the Palestinians useful in some ways. This is a workforce. Prior to October 7th, you had, I can't remember off the top of my head, right? But you had a large workforce going from the West Bank into Israel proper daily. More than 100,000, maybe even more than that. Even at this time last year, a year after October 7th, you still had 20 or 30,000 Palestinians who have been allowed to keep their work permits because they were so essential to Israeli businesses outside of the West Bank. So there's this idea that Israel right now has the 55% of Gaza that they can control. They can move forward on settling that. They can move forward on Trump's towers coming in, on Elon Musk's electric vehicle factories, right? On Larry Ellison's AI data hubs, all these things. They can move forward on that. And Kushner and Witkoff and the others can line their pockets that way. Danielle Weiss can bring her settler caravans or trailers down there, right? I mean, they've got plenty to work on right now. And then if you do want the coastline, you do want further settlement expansion, well, then you push from the north. Just as they do in the West Bank, you start these settlements and you use the IDF and settlers to push the Palestinians out. I mean, so you can see how there is a controllable, manageable process here for the Israelis to achieve their ethnic cleansing. I think this is why, if people recall, in the week following the Trump peace plan being signed, and you had J.D. Vance going to Israel, and at that point, the Knesset passed by one vote a bill to annex the West Bank, and this got Vance really upset, and it got a lot of Israelis upset too, because what they saw was what they saw essentially was the right in Israel not doing it the correct way. Right. And you can imagine the conversations between those not part of that right wing and those, because everyone essentially of any political significance who's Israeli is in favor of annexing the West Bank. And so you can see the conversations, right, being along the lines of, look, man, we want to annex the West Bank too, but you're going about this all wrong. Slow and steady wins the course. And I think that's what you'll see play out in Gaza, as well as the annexation of the West Bank. It won't be a campaign meant to last 3 months or 4 months. It won't look like 48 or 67. It will be slow and methodical and deliberate. And the reason why, or one of the reasons why, is it gives the world a reason to look away. It gives the world excuses. It allows the world to get back to business. And if you have a Gaza-style campaign in the West Bank, that's going to be difficult. But if you do things slowly, and if you, over the course of months, move out 30,000 people here, or move in 40,000 settlers here, and just do it slowly, methodically, right? Then wake up one day in 5 years or 10 years from now, and there is no more West Bank. Judea and Samaria has become the facts on the ground, as the Israelis like to describe it.
Yeah, I think we're quickly getting there. And I wonder if that's why suddenly I can't search for Itmar Ben-Gvir on X. Nothing comes up, and they stopped automatically translating into Hebrew. These are the guys. Yeah. Itmar Ben-Gvir is like the guy you plan a bank robbery with a bunch of people, and then right before it, he posts on Facebook, go into the bank with a gun in his hand or something, right? Like, just completely, they almost got this whole thing done. They've done it quietly. They've done it with U.S. support, and he's just so belligerent and open about it. It's really hurting their popularity.
That's absolutely, I think absolutely the case here, but I think that's what we're looking at. I think that the Israelis have I don't want to use the word one, because it's not a zero thing, and it didn't meet a lot of the Israeli objectives, and their objectives in many ways were unrealistic. To destroy the Palestinian resistance was always going to be an impossibility unless they actually completely cleansed Gaza of all Palestinians, which is very difficult to do. Certainly there's those who wanted that, but there will be a Palestinian resistance as long as there's occupation. And I think most Israelis understand that. And I think that their relationship with the United States, one, I think their own religious, historical, metaphysical view of this tells them that they're supposed to have this type of opposition, that nothing is supposed to be easy, that it is supposed to be us against the world. That's what our cosmology tells us, right? But the more practical aspect is I think they believe as long as they have the Americans with them, they can do anything. That the Americans will protect them, they will finance them, they will cover for them, etc. And I think that is the way the Israelis view this.
Absolutely. Matt, I can't thank you enough for your time on the show today. Dark news, but your analysis is absolutely brilliant. Everybody, be sure to keep up with Matt's work. It's so important. At Matthew P. Ho on X, matthewho.substat.com. I think you're still with the Eisenhower Media Network as well, and weekly with Judge Napolitano. So, Matt, thank you, and hopefully we could do it again.
Hey, thanks, Kyle.